Hi, it's Sarah, your friendly neighborhood prevention specialist. Um, so today we are going to be talking about self-esteem, and this is good for grades third through fifth or third through sixth. Um, in the description down below when this video is all done, I will put a link to the Google Classroom. You can also go to Google Classroom and see and go to Beyond Survival and print off the sheet that we're going to work on today. If you cannot print that off, then just write it down on a piece of paper. So I actually just realized that the sheet that I need is on my printer. So I might have to go away for a little bit and come back. But before we do that, before we do that, let's talk about self-esteem. So what is self-esteem? The definition of that is how we view ourselves, not how others view us, not who we think we are, but basically how we view ourselves. And, whether we have healthy self-esteem or low self-esteem. There are many contributors to low self-esteem. And we like to liken self-esteem to a bucket. So when we're born, our bucket is full. It's full. We're ready to take on the world and learn how to walk and all the other things that babies do. And our self-esteem bucket is full. So as we get older and as we start to go to school and other things happen, holes get put in our bucket of self-esteem, and our self-esteem starts to drain out. Things that can cause holes in a bucket of self-esteem are things like abuse, physical or sexual abuse, bullying, cyberbullying, neglect, abandonment. Sometimes the things that we say to ourselves, the things that we think about ourselves, like when we think I'm worthless, nobody likes me, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, all of those terrible things that we say to ourselves that are untrue put holes in our bucket of self-esteem, and then it starts to drain out. And what happens is we end up with an empty bucket. So the good news is that we can fill it back up, we can patch those holes, and we can fill it back up. All right, looking at my notes here because I don't want to miss anything that I want to tell you guys that we should talk about today. So everybody needs to feel a few different things, like I belong, I can do things, and people appreciate me. So what I want you to do, if you can't print off that 3 keys, is write down I belong, or I feel I belong when, and write down I can do things, or I feel I can do things when, and people appreciate me, or I feel appreciated when. And we'll fill these out in a little bit. So, other things that can make us, that can put holes in our bucket is when we're left out of a group, maybe when our friends do something and we don't get invited, or family, that can hurt. It can hurt sometimes. Let's see. So let's get right into key number 1. So everybody needs to feel this way. Like when someone chooses you to be on their team, I belong when. So I want you to write down when you feel like you belong. I belong when, and it might be, I feel I belong when, for me, it would be, I feel I belong when I'm sitting around a dinner table with my whole family. I feel a sense of belonging. I belong to my family. They belong to me, with me. And I'm happy then. I'm happy when I'm surrounded by people that I care about. I feel I belong when a coworker asks my advice about something. That's a nice sense of belonging when somebody says, what do you feel about this? How do you think we should do this? That's always nice. So I want you to write down um, a few times that you feel like you belong. If you're watching this and it's not live, feel free to pause and take as much time as you need to write this stuff down. So, what are some things that make you feel like you belong? Okay, so for number 2, which is I can do things. So, I can do things. Here's an example. Everyone needs to feel this way. Jimmy is only 3 years old. He feels this way when he puts his clothes on all by himself. Kathy is 7. She feels this way when she rides her two-wheeler for the first time. Mick is 11. He gets this feeling by building model airplanes. Denise is 16. She feels this way when she drives the car with her new driver's license. Damien is in a wheelchair. He feels this way with his new electric wheelchair that allows him to go places he couldn't go before and without being pushed. Grandpa Walt feels this way when he takes care of his great grandbaby for the evening. I can do things. See? So those are some examples of how people feel when they can do things. And I would like you to write down a few examples of when you feel like you can do things. I gave you some of those examples. Feel free to pause and come up with some of your own. And then the third one, people appreciate me. Mary is doing her chores when the phone rings. She asks her little brother Jack to answer the phone. He answers it and takes a message for Mary, and she says, "Thanks, kid." And Jack feels appreciated. When her mother comes home and sees that Mary has straightened up, she says, "The house looks great, sweetie." Mary feels appreciated. Mary's mom opens a shopping bag and shows Mary the safety pins Mary's been asking for, and she grins. "You remembered," she said, hugging her. Her mom feels appreciated. So I want you to write down a few times that you feel appreciated, like when someone says thank you when you do something for them. Right now, we're all at home quite a bit. So maybe you brought your mom or dad a soda, or maybe you brought your grandpa a sandwich and he said thank you, or they said thank you. Having people be appreciative and feeling appreciated is important. Like your efforts are appreciated and worth something. We all like that. So write down a few times that you're feeling appreciated. And again, feel free to pause and take as long as you need to write those things down. So remember that a feelings person, this is what happens when you go live. Sometimes you mess up and there's no editing. A person's feelings about himself or herself or themselves are influenced by 3 things: whether you feel like you belong to a family or another group, whether you feel competent, like you're able to do things well, and whether you feel if other people notice and are gladdened by your presence. They're happy by your presence and they're appreciative of the things that you do. It's also important to remember that the things that we say to each other put big holes in our self-esteem bucket as well. So an exercise that I would like you to do is think about your very best friend or your mom or your aunt or your grandpa, somebody that you love a whole lot, somebody that you respect, somebody that you admire, and think about what you would say to them if they said, "I'm worthless." What might you say to them? If your very best friend said, "I can't do anything at all," what might you say to them? If your aunt said, "I'm ugly," what might you say to her? So if your answers were things like, "No, I think you're great. You're not ugly at all. You're beautiful and everybody's beautiful." However it is that you would speak to those people, I want you to speak that way to yourself. It might feel kind of funny at first, um, but I want you to be your own best friend. It's important to be your own best friend. People with healthy self esteem, they typically take their failures with good humor. They may not laugh about it at the time or at all, but they can look at that and say, well, that did not work out. How would I do it differently this time? Instead of getting stuck in that spiral of self speak that says, I can't do anything. I'm no good at anything. I totally messed that up. People with healthy self esteem will say, that didn't work. How can I do it better next time? Or I'm sure not going to do that again. I learned my lesson, and move on. They're able to move on from those things. Um, because we're all going to fail at things. We're all going to, it doesn't matter how long I've made fried chicken. I make excellent fried chicken. It doesn't matter how long I've made it or how many times I've made it. Sometimes I mess it up. It just happens. And then we eat sandwiches and move on, and that's okay. It's called having grace with yourself. But I want you to be your own best friend. So speak to yourself as you would speak to your best friend or your mom or your dad, somebody that you care about a whole lot. When you hear somebody say disparaging or down things about themselves, and I want you to think about what you would say to them, then say those things to yourself. It's important that you do that, even though it's going to feel kind of weird at first, because that will help plug those holes and your bucket of self-esteem will fill up again. Because it really doesn't matter what you look like, how tall you are, how short you are, how long your hair is, what color your skin is. It doesn't matter. You're all beautiful. You're all wonderful. And you all deserve to be here. You all deserve respect and love and appreciation and all the good stuff. You all deserve that. All of us do. All of us deserve that. And if we remember that and we're our very best friends and we remind ourselves of those things, then that's going to shore up that self-esteem. It's going to plug up those holes in our bucket, and our bucket will fill back up again. And then when things come along that are frustrating, or maybe they didn't go our way, we can move on a little faster. Right now is a weird time in our country, in the world. Everybody's at home. Nobody knows kind of how to homeschool exactly, or from home. There's lots of different things going on in the world right now, and it's very frustrating for a lot of people. And it can be really scary for some people. And that's okay. It's okay if you don't know how to do it. It's okay if you don't know what you're doing right now, or if it all feels really foreign. That's okay. It's okay. Because we're all going to learn together. And eventually the world will go back to somewhat what it was before. Hopefully, we're all a little better for the experience, but we will be able to go outside again and go to parks again and go to school again, swimming, and do all the fun things that we like to do. Eventually, we will be able to do those things. But for right now, I want you to be your own best friend and have some grace with yourself. It's okay that things are not going the way that you thought that they would right now, or maybe the people in your house are really frustrated, or you're really frustrated. It's okay to acknowledge those feelings and say, I'm really frustrated with the way things are going. I don't know how to do this, but remind yourself that you will be okay. You really will. You're going to be okay. Life is going to go back to what it was, and we're all going to get to go back to work and school and see family and friends, and it's really going to be okay. So this is a time when it's really important for you to fill that bucket. It's really important for you to make sure that you don't poke holes in your bucket of self-esteem, and that you don't let anybody else poke holes in your bucket of self-esteem. That's another good point. People with healthy self-esteem take constructive criticism really well. For example, when your teacher says, hey, that book report was pretty good, but I would like you to focus on some of these other things. or you didn't pass this test. I think maybe you should study, a little bit more about the subject. They say, okay, and they move on without letting it poke holes in their bucket of self-esteem. And they take cruel and mean things that others say to them about them and just let it roll off their back because they know it doesn't have anything to do with them. When somebody says something cruel to you, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with them. It's their choice, because hurt people hurt people. If somebody's hurting, sometimes they want to spread that hurt around. Not everybody, but sometimes they do. And they want to spread that hurt around. They sometimes think maybe if I spread it around, I won't hurt so much. All it does is compound that hurt. So if somebody says something mean or cruel to you, just let it roll off your back. Just let it roll, because it doesn't have anything to do with you. Again, it's different than somebody giving you constructive criticism, which people with healthy self-esteem take well. And just letting things go by doesn't have anything to do with you if somebody's being mean. You remember that you are great. Again, it doesn't matter how tall you are, how short you are, the color of your skin, the color of your hair, how much money you have or don't have. None of those things matter. You all deserve good, healthy self-esteem. Okay, I think that I have talked about self-esteem enough today. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. So please, post comments here or go to the Google Classroom, and I will post that where you can print off or look at the activity and write it down. But I really would like you to, I would really, really like you to sit down and just take a few minutes and write down what happens when you feel like you belong. Where do you feel like you belong? How you think you can do things, and how people appreciate you. How you feel when people are appreciating you, how you feel when you do things. For example, how you feel when you do things. If you play a musical instrument, think about when you very first started playing that instrument. Were you very good at it? Probably not. My youngest son used to play the trombone, and when he first started, he used to call it the Dying Cat Parade. He said it sounded terrible. By the time he was done with band that year, he was pretty good. So I want you to think about that. When you first started playing an instrument, were you very good? No, but I bet you're a lot better than you were, and you're getting better still. So that's another way to shore up and plug those holes. All right, so I had a great time with you. Again, feel free to go to the activity. Feel free to go to Google Classroom. And 3rd through 5th or 6th, I will see you next Tuesday, where we'll talk about something else. And in the meantime, leave me comments or go to Google Classroom. I hope you have a really great day. Remember, be kind and wash your hands. Bye-bye.